This is my summary of my interview I did with two students I babysit who were in 5th, 6th grade. So I let them pick 5 questions each, and then I made 3 questions. So the first one was, do we have a king in our country? They said no. I was like, do you know any countries that does? They said the UK does. I said, the UK does have a king, King Charles III. So the next one was, do we have a president? They said yes, Joe Biden. They knew that instantly. So then I asked, do you know what the president does? And they said the president makes laws. I said the president makes and enforces the laws passed by Congress. And then part of that question is, how does someone get to be president? The president is elected, they said. So I said, we talked about how elections work. So I asked them, do you know anyone else who has got elected? These were 2 Lummi students, so they said the tribal chairman, and another person they know of who's been elected was Donald Trump. So the next question I asked the first student was, who do you think who is the most important woman you've heard of? And she said it was Rosa Parks. And she said because Rosa Parks helped with racism. And I said, do you know what Rosa Parks did? So we talked about how, Rosa Parks sat on the bus and wouldn't give up her seat to the white person and was arrested for that. So then they boycotted the Montgomery bus systems. So then another question, the 4th question we did was, what was life like when your parents were your age? So we talked about, she said they didn't have social media, they didn't have cell phones. I was like, yeah. She said they had house phones. I said they had rotary phones. There was only 3 channels on TV at the time, different things like that. So I was like, go and talk to your parents. Like, ask your parents, what did they do when you were age? What was life like? What was going on in history? I mean, what was going on at that time? What was the current events? So the next one was, do you like, these are the 3 that were created. I asked, do you like social studies? And the student said, the girl said that they haven't really done social studies, pardon the sound, they haven't really done social studies a lot in nurse school. They've been doing a lot of science recently, and they've been concerned more about science, math, reading, which we all know that's how it is. Social studies is always kind of pushed last. And she said because she doesn't like science, she doesn't think she'll like social studies. And I said, don't be like that. Social studies is important. I'm a huge history buff. I love history. So I'm like, you can learn a lot in social studies. It's interesting. It's not hard like math, So then I said, what do you think you should be learning in social studies? And she said, like, history, how the government works. So then I asked, do you remember anything you learned in the past in social studies? And she's talked about how in 4th grade, this is a 5th grade student, they learned about the president. So I was like, how do you learn about the president? She said they read passages and then answered questions. So they did a lot of worksheets. They learned a little bit of, she said a little bit of government stuff like that. So then the other student I interviewed, the questions we did was, ask what state do you live in? North Carolina. She knew. This was a 6th grade student, and so I asked her what some of the other states, and she started listing them off: West Virginia, Texas, Arizona, California, Maine, Florida, Georgia. She just started South Carolina. She just went through them before I could stop her. I mean, she's just listening. She knew her states. So another question I asked was, how do you think, do you know how schools, parks, roads are made? Who pays for them? And where does the money come from to pay for these schools, parks, roads? So she said the government pays for it, and how it's paid for is through taxes. And we talked about how people are taxed, and it tax scores towards public schools, roads, bridges, things like that, redoing roads, public parks. So then I asked her, what's some places in North Carolina that you've been to that you can like learn the history? And like she's been to the North Carolina Museum. She told me one place they went to, their school was, they went to an old tobacco farm. And she doesn't remember where it was or the name of it, but like they learned a lot of like the crops they grew at that time, how they harvested the crops, things like that. They've also been to like the zoo, Fort Fisher Aquarium. She goes to the powwow, so she learned about her local culture and history. And then, Lumbee homecomings, the powwows at UNCP. And then another question was, if you were planning a trip, how would you get to a place you've never been before? How would you figure out how to get there? So we talked about now you would use things like GPS. You'd get on the internet and search it. You look at maps. Depending on where you're going, you might need a map. If you were like camping, we said you'd use like compasses, maps, things like that. If you went somewhere far away, you might have to take a plane. So you would get on the internet and look up flights, and you'd pay for a flight, and you would find out how to get to the airport and how to get from the airport to where you're going to stay at and do things like that. So then I asked, do you know of any current events that's going on? And she said she's been hearing some about the situation in Gaza with Israel and Palestine. And so then I asked, like, how did you learn about this? She said she's heard it in the news. Internet, social media, things like that. Her family's been talking about it. So that was my interview with 2 students. Thank you.